Excellent. Well, thanks, Cecile. Thanks, Kevin, for the opportunity. I think some of you may have been, actually a good portion of you probably were here in January when I presented the initial collaborative business planning overview. One of the, I'll say it, the silver linings in our, what I've been calling the COVID hiatus, at least for us consultants, is that it's provided us some time to now incorporate some of the things that we conceptualized back in January into our CBP solution. So CBP is really a purpose-built custom solution on top of QualiWare, i.e. powered by QualiWare. Bob Bovair, who's online there too, is instrumental in the development of this product using CaseMaker and QCL custom code. So we have our own unique meta model that takes advantage of some good QualiWare functionality to provide business users with a tool to understand and, more importantly, optimize their business processes, both in terms of resource requirements and also in terms of cost and or profitability, depending on if you're a private or public sector focus. So I thought what we do is I'll walk you through very quickly some conceptual slides to talk how we're integrating Lean in with this, and then I'll spend more time on a demo. Actually, Michael Seeger and I worked over the last week or so to put together a call center demo to illustrate some of the points that he talked about. We thought we'd kind of keep this theme for the day. So conceptually, what is Lean? I'm sure I know Lean is widely practiced across the government of Canada now. There's been certainly lots of training, lots of Kaizens, lots of efforts around process and improvement. But really what it is, it's all about focusing on the customer and saying, you know, what is that customer really interested in the service that we're providing? So it's all about value creation. And it's also about identifying unnecessary steps and reducing waste to kind of improve the end-to-end performance of the organization. So some of you may be familiar with the classic iron triangle, some will call it, i.e. cost, time, quality, capacity, you know, give me any two. What Lean really does is allows you to reduce cost, improves throughput time and lead time, and improve quality and capacity of the organization. So it changes your perspective on that whole triple constraint thinking. So here's an example. One of the tools that is in the Lean toolkit is called ValueStream Mapping. So this was based on some work we did at Health Canada a number of years ago now, not actually implementing ABP or CBP, but actually working on efficiency indicators with them. But they had a service standard around how they would provide an inspection report when a client called and sort of said, hey, we need to get this product certified or this facility certified around the regulations and compliance. So the key activities, they would go out and do a site visit. They would then handle queries back and forth with the client, and they would ultimately produce a report. So very, very simple flow diagram here. So from a Lean perspective, when you're doing value stream mapping, you're looking at the total service time. So that's really, the service standard is 30 days to process that from the time of the call to the time the report is delivered. And that's broken into a variety of times. So we call the elapsed time. So how long does it take, kind of clock time, for that site visit to be scheduled and executed? How long does it take to set up the meetings and have the query, the meeting, and the calls? And how long does it take to, you know, do the reports from the time you start it to the time you finish it? So those are what we call elapsed time. There's also then the processing time. So that's really the hands-on time. That's the resource requirement for that particular. So it's typically less than the elapsed time. So a meeting for handling these queries may only take 3 hours, but scheduling it and getting it coordinated and so on may take overall 2 days and so on. So we talk about that as the processing time. And then typically the real killer in most business processes is the wait time. That's the time where the ball gets passed from typically one functional group to another and before it's picked up. So what goes out of your outbox and what comes into your inbox. So this wait time. So if you look at the total here of wait time plus elapsed time, basically 34 days. So obviously they're not meeting their service standard. So understanding from a lean perspective what's happening and then optimizing that is absolutely key. So there's some parameters that lean practitioners will develop. One is called the value added ratio. So it's really the ratio of processing time, which is absolutely the minimum requirement of time to do the work, divided by the total lead time, that for 34 days. So in this case, it's about 9%. Actually, to be honest, that's not bad. Seems very low, but 10 to 20% is considered, you know, better performance, really. Very, very rarely will you see organizations about 30 or 40%. So those are some of the parameters around lean. What do we do with activity-based planning, which is what CBP was originally built on? That methodology, I couldn't help but chuckle. Michael was talking about closing the loop, and we actually follow a methodology called the closed loop for implementing activity-based planning. So what it does is basically says, yes, you've got a business process, but what drives that business process? What customer demands do you have? In this case, inspections, and they also do assessments. So both of those two demands or outputs drive the requirements for these activities. And those activities need to be done by people and facilities and equipment, so those are the resources. So we actually build a process model, process map, that flows from the bottom to the top in regards to the requirements for resources to meet actually outputs or demands. And that model, then we load in data, operational and financial data, to actually do some calculation. And that's where the intelligence comes within the CBP application, is the math that's done. It's not a traditional application of QualiWare, so we have to do some custom work around that. So operational information would be your volumes. So if we know what our volumes of inspections and assessments are, and then if we know things like our consumption rate, so on average, how many site visits are done per inspection? Let's say that takes, on average, you have to go out and do it twice. So if we had 10 inspections, we'd have to do 20 site visits to support the inspection demand. And then if we knew on average how much time a site visit takes, let's say that's 40 hours, then 40 times 20 is 80 hours. So we would need 80 hours of field team to do just this part of the process, the business process. And then if we move that all up and we bring up the volumes and all the consumption rates, we can actually compare those against the capacity. So what are the constraints in our business process that would limit us in the amount of work, i.e. activities, or more appropriately, the amount of output that we can deliver. So we put those into the model. So typically there's only so many hours in the day for people, there's only so many pieces of equipment available, there's only so much space in our facility, and we test the model against those constraints. So then assuming we can actually physically do this, we can then look at our financials. So we map the financial, your expense statements, into the resource structure. That's really what the resources are. You pay for your resources, you pay for your people, depreciation on equipment, lease, you know, utilities, whatever on buildings. You pay for maybe external contractors, and then you pull those dollars back down through the model. So we can get at things like the activity cost, the demand or output cost, and even the customer cost. So our customers typically would take a variety of requirements or demands from our organization. And if you're in a either in a cost recovery mode where you're charging for some of those services, or if you're in the private sector and you're you know, putting a revenue stream on that, you can actually determine what the profitability is on a customer or product service basis. So again, I know that's a bit of a rehash for some of you, but kind of important to understand the kind of two paths: operational calculation, comparison to capacity to determine utilization, and then pulling those dollars back down through the model through the operational understanding that the first pass is done. That's why we call it the closed loop. It kind of up and down to close that loop. So with Lean, what we do is Lean practitioners will do a great job at mapping this all out with their value stream maps. And now what we can do with CBP is we can do that same visualization. We can load that with regard to our resource requirements to do those activities and get at the capacity to serve. And then because we can handle the financials as well, we can actually get at the cost to serve. So this addresses really a big gap in most Lean implementations, in that Lean is great for identifying process improvement ideas, but it's not so good. There's not very many tools that allow a Lean practitioner or a Lean team to understand the resource impact of those changes, or even more appropriately, the cost impact of those changes. So that's what CBP brings to the equation. Allows you to do your value stream map, marry that with what we call our activity-based planning maps, and allow you to do scenario planning into the future. So, okay.
Mike, my experience in talking with some Lean practitioners is that they actually don't have a lot of tools to support that kind of work. You know, it's a lot of drawing on boards and sticky notes. So something like this puts a lot of structure around it.
Yep, absolutely. Even in the value stream mapping, and we work with a variety of partners, lean implementers, and you know, the best tech that I've seen is somebody that's, you know, skilled in Visio. And it is this timeline here that you see. That's an important thing for an understanding point of view. So you can appreciate drawing that out in Visio, the challenges you'll have and even in QualiWare. I mean, in being able to collect information out of an object and put it appropriately in the timeline. So we'll show you what we've done with CBP to streamline that. So. Okay, so let me get out of there. Let's go into this model. So again, just a little, you'll recognize the QLM interface, and I'll just explain a few things here for the QualiWare at heart. So we have all of our different symbols. So these would be all the objects that we would associate with any diagram, and we have two types of diagrams. So if we go over, let me just show you the repository explorer. So these are all the components that sit, and we have value stream diagram and we have an ABP diagram. So right now we're looking at the ABP diagram. So let me take you through what this is all about. So we've only dealing as an inbound call center. So let's say this is the CRA one that Michael walked us through, and we look at how many calls per day. So we can say everywhere you see these little green V's, those are variables. So we can use those in calculated formulas around consumption rates, around volumes, around financials and whatever, and it provides flexibility in our model. That those are basically the levers now that we can readily give to a business user so they can do scenario playing. I'll talk a little bit about methodology after we finish the demo here if we have time. So calls per day, 5,000 calls per day. This is a monthly model. So up here I've got some global variables. So I've got the number of business days per month. So this is going to be a 20 business day month. So 20 times 5,000 is the 100,000 calls that need to be handled. Now, one of the interesting things that we've done in this model is, and Michael talked about this with that CRA example, the number of drop calls or block calls. And so we said 20% of those are dropped. So 20,000 of the 100,000 calls are dropped, but we know that has an impact on customer satisfaction. In fact, someone can actually develop a kind of a KPI or a factor to actually say, we know that every 25 drop calls that our overall customer satisfaction is going to drop by 1%. So we can actually simulate a performance metric in our model as well. So and I'll show you this later when we run a scenario, as we drop or lower the number of drop calls, our customer satisfaction will go up. Right now we're at 60% satisfaction. Not great. Obviously there's some improvements. So let's look at the business process. So what happens with the call? So the ones that aren't dropped come into the tier 1 agent. So the tier 1 agent will handle that call. So that's really the connection here. And it takes them on average 5 minutes to handle a first response call. There is first call resolution. So 70% of the time, the agent can handle that call properly. However, 30% of the time, so 30% of 80,000 is 24,000 calls that have to get pushed up to the tier 2 agent for a more detailed explanation and so on. So what we're seeing here is kind of an efficiency factor of how well the tier 1 call is working. I've also got some training that's taking place over here. So Michael and I actually worked to build this model. One of the reasons was to keep the theme here today for call centers, but also to show the value of having better training and its impact on the organization to understand what the cost benefit could be of implementing something like Interact Coach or better training methodologies and better tools within a call center. So we're going to come back and play with that. That training, just so you see, there are some variables here. So we said basically every week they will run a training session. So in a course of a 20-day month, we would run 4 sessions. And typically about 25% of the tier 1 agents will attend a session, and that will be a full day session, 7 hours. Okay, so 7 hours is actually the same amount of practical time that an agent is available for work. So that would be maybe paid 8 hours, but net out lunches, net out breaks, and so on. So that's the practical time an agent is available. So the agent itself basically is comprised of, you can work some overtime, so we can simulate overtime expenses at a higher cost, at a higher unit cost, of course, and the actual fixed resource. So we have symbology here. So these home plates represent fixed resources. That means their costs do not change over the time period of the model. And then we have a variety of variable resources. So overtime is a demand-driven thing. So we can turn that on and off. We pay on an hourly basis. I've also got some other call center related variable expenses. So the number of SIP channels. So that's like your sort of like your telecom trunks. How many of these SIP channels do we need to support the number of calls? We've got cloud telephony now that's available from a variety of vendors. So instead of companies buying or organizations buying their own AVR or automatic call distribution, basically they can buy a package and pay on a per user basis for that particular service. So we've kind of outsourced the telephony component for this call center. So continuing up here, we've got tier 2 calls. So that's the result of not these calls being transferred. So there is some transfer time. So everybody can identify with this. This is kind of interesting about call centers. So when you say, okay, yeah, I need to get to the next level here, but the guy that you spoke to has to do the introduction, and then the other person comes on the line. So there's some time taken for that tier 1 agent to do the transfer to tier 2. And then the tier 2 agent gets involved. And because this has already been escalated, maybe the supervisor has to be called in. So we can actually simulate that. So we say, okay, well, these types of calls, once they've been escalated, maybe 10 minutes. And that would be for both the supervisor and the T2 agent. But only 20% of the time does that supervisor get involved. So we can actually flex that based on the quality of the tier 2 agent, based on the knowledge that they have regarding the pass of that call. So we can flex that as well. And then the tier 2 agent basically is involved in that, but they also have callbacks. So at some point they say, hey, I got to go do some research. So similar to what Mike walked us through with the CRA example, when he was the mystery caller. And we use these purple symbols here are actually what we call connectors. So I've got callback that actually connects back down here. So it just allows me to move things appropriately and avoid kind of a spaghetti network on the diagram itself. So I've got what would be called complete and accurate. Percent complete and accurate is a lean terminology to designate how well you do any activity the first time. So we're saying complete and accurate is 90%, which means that incomplete and not accurate is 10%. So 10% of all these tier 2 calls actually wind up as being a callback. And even they aren't quite correct sometimes. 90% of them actually generate a second callback that we find out more information in the first call and we have to call again. And that callback time is about 10 minutes. So we have our 2 agents, tier 1, tier 2 agents, probably paid at different rates, of course. We have our supervisors that oversee and you know, supervise these people as well as get involved in tier 2 calls. We have a facility that they all sit in, and this could be a lease facility. So we've very, you know, kind of rudimentary model. We've covered a lot of ground with what a call center would have, and of course this can be expanded. We just want to keep this for illustration purposes. So all of this information now we can bring into a value stream map. So here's kind of the simplest component is we do tier 1 calls. They take 5 minutes. We have a queue time of 2 minutes. So I just use that stuff that Mike mentioned with CRA, the 2-minute standard. So our lead time, total lead time is 7 minutes, 5 plus 2, and our complete and accurate is 70%. That's the first call resolution. Then at 2 minutes to pass it over to tier 2 call, we know that is 10 minutes. So the lead time and processing time is the same, but we know we have a complete and accurate of 90%. So this is data that's shared between the ABP diagram and the VSM, value stream map diagram. Callbacks, okay, 2 hours to go do the research, and then we get a callback, 10 minutes. That's done correctly 90% of the time, and then obviously more detailed research, 4 hours to do that and get a second callback. So this is kind of a classic value stream map, and now we've built some smarts in here. So when I calculate this model, it automatically and dynamically draws the timeline and gives me some of the lean parameters. So I know that total lead time is about 6.5 hours. I know my total processing time is only 35 minutes. So that's all the touch time. If a client got down, not every client obviously is going to get to the full meal deal here, which is probably a good thing. But the maximum time any client would be involved would be 35 minutes. So really the value added ratio, you remember that ratio is about 9%. And our roll through yield, another lean term, is the percentage of it being done correctly throughout the whole process. So we have 70% times 90% times 90%, and that's where that 57% is coming from. So that's an efficiency, sort of an efficiency factor. So those are numbers you're wanting to obviously improve as you make lean improvements. Any questions on that? I'll just take a breath here. So the real value of the tool, though, becomes when it does its scenario playing. So methodology-wise, we build the model, sort of as Michael described, the as-is model, and we validate that against known time periods, both for the financials and for the operational flows, and then we can do some scenarios. So if we look at our total costs here, we've got about $500,000 in monthly cost, all right? And if we looked at our unit costs, so the only demand we have, it's about $5 per call. That's what the unit cost would be. And those costs are coming from our call center facilities. So we have lease, insurance, utilities costs. I've got, you know, my annual costs here. I can see what those are. I can go down and let's look at my tier 1 agents. So here's my salaries and my benefits associated with those. One of the cool things that we have with CBP is its ability to understand all the inflows and outflows. So this is actually now showing me where the flows are coming in, what the resultant costs are, and where they're going to. So if I look at, I can also look at this on an account by account basis, because not only is it taking the total costs and moving those down through the model, it's taking all of the delineated costs at the chart of accounts level. So I can rebuild kind of an expense statement at any one of my activities, and I can see how those costs flow into that particular activity. So my total cost here is $500,000. Let's say the business says, okay, let's say this was, let's make it COVID related. So what happened at Service Canada and at CRA when they introduced the CERB. I'm sure calls went through the roof. So how would they plan and model that? So let's make it a little bit more modest. Let's take a 20% increase in calls. So if I increase this from 5,000 to 6,000, what's the impact of that going to be? Okay, so I recalculate my model, and it tells me, you don't have enough resource somewhere. So it's really happening in my tier 2 agents. Okay, so I'm at 109%. I should point out the other utilizations. Typically, a call center, you will probably want to run in the 80 to 85% utilization. That provides enough of a buffer for handling peak volumes and so on. So we can see that we've broken a constraint here. So all of our financial information disappears. That's very important. We can only be misled by erroneous financial information. And we can see that some of these have also turned from green to yellow, indicating we can set traffic lights to alert us that we're getting into a near overcapacity situation, which is what's happening for tier 1 agents as well. So we could take a brute force approach to this. We could say, well, let's just hire more people. So we could actually say, okay, well, let's run that as a scenario. So I'm going to take my agents. I'm going to hire, let's say I'm going to hire 45 new agents or 10 new agents. I'm going to go from 35 to 45. So I could rerun my model, and yeah, lo and behold, I've no broken constraints. So I could actually cost that out. So if I recalc the financials, so I've added about $50,000 worth of cost to that total monthly operation. However, I know that this is a little too high. So I probably want to add, same thing with supervisors, I probably want to add some more people there. So if I take this to get it at, let's say I'm going to add 15 more tier 1 agents, and let's say I'm going to add a couple more supervisors, because now I've got more people to manage, and I recalculate that model, that says, uh-oh, got another problem. Okay, so well, first of all, I made it wrong. I should have made 12 instead of 2. So let's do that, recalculate the model. And I can see now I've got a problem. I don't have enough space in my facility to house those additional 10 plus 15, 20, 27 people. So I might now have to say, okay, well, I've got to expand my facility. So I can go to, let's simulate that and say I'm going to increase my capacity by 20%. So I'm going to take it from 4,200 square feet up to 5,000 square feet. That doesn't come for free. I'm going to have to actually increase my lease cost, which is $300,000 a year, up to $360,000. And now I can actually run that as a new scenario to see what the impact is going to be. So, okay, so that's fine. So now I've got my utilizations back to what I expect to be normal operating levels. And my facilities, you know, okay, it's getting a bit tight, but I can handle a little bit more from a personnel point of view. But now my costs are up to $615,000. And look here, my satisfaction level has dropped dramatically because I'm still dropping those 20% of my calls. So I could try a different scenario. Better scenario might be not to just add people, but to apply some better training. So if I look at my training, and let's say I bring Michael and his team in, and we put in Interact Coach, and we improve the efficiency of the training. So we don't need as many agents on these regularly scheduled sessions. So I'm going to take that from, let's say, 25 to 10% of the agents have to do, and that time will be it's more focused. So let's, instead of 7 hours, let's make that 3 hours and see what the impact is. So if I watch my utilization, 81% here, and now it goes down to 7. So I've freed up capacity, but that training and the tools that we would put in place by using, say, Interact Coach, that's going to have an impact on first call resolution as well. So now I'm going to handle more on first call. So if I go from, let's say, 70 to 80% first call resolution, that's going to make a change. And I can also find out that the calls that are coming, they're better informed. So with the amount of time, let's say the supervisors or the tier 1, tier 2 agents are spending might be reduced. So maybe that only goes from 10 to 5 minutes calls now, because a lot of the tough ones have been handled by the tier 1 agent, and maybe supervisors only get involved 10% of the time. So if I rerun all of that as a scenario, and this is one of the interesting things with having these ABP models, is your ability to kind of scenario play at the speed of thought. So we can recalculate these models, and now I can see, okay, yeah, I've been able to handle that. In fact, now I've got too much capacity, and my utilization's here at 31. So I don't need that many people. I can probably reduce that to let's say 20. And so I'm going to see some impact on that. I can recalculate that model. I've got the same issue here with my supervisors. I probably don't need that many supervisors. So I could take that down. Let's say I take that down to 6, because I don't have as many people I need to supervise. Plus they're not as engaged in those tier 1 calls. And I recalculate my model, and I can see, okay, yeah, now I'm actually lower in cost because I've done better training. And my unit cost now has gone from $5 down to $4. Now that would have an impact, obviously, if you're in private sector and you're charging a fee or whatever, you would actually see profitability on this as well. So, and then we can actually see what the impact is on the value stream, because all of this information now gets pulled over, and you could actually then assume, oh, well, the research, we don't have to do as much. So if I take that down from 2 hours to, let's say, 1 hour, because now we have extra capacity as well in the tier 2 agents, and I can take, let's say, instead of 4 hours, now the second callback is only 2 hours, I could actually see what would the impact be. So I've increased my value added ratio from 9 to 14%, and my growth through yield is increased as well. So we've been able to kind of illustrate those two key concepts and how we integrate that together. So anyways, pretty fast demo. I know there's a lot of content there, but just want to show you the flexibility of building these process models and being able to do the scenario playing, and really enabling business users to kind of simulate what their business processes are and how they can improve those using lean concepts and using general, activity-based planning concepts as well. So just going to quickly jump back. I know we're running short on time here, so let me just quickly jump back to the presentation. And I'm just going to, I'll blow this out because I want to show methodology-wise. So there is an 8-step methodology that we typically implement in doing activity-based planning models. Those overlap very nicely with the classic DMAIC process: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So we have the methodology to go through and build those models out to get you to this point where you can optimize and plan for the future around your business process and so on. So really, lean and ABP are certainly powerful tools in their own right. Lean for identifying waste and reducing lead times and building this culture of change and process improvement. ABP on understanding and building consensus on operational financial flows, being able to conduct what ifs, but the real value comes when you tie those together to visualize the impact of those improvements and to understand its impact on costs and budget. So I shall stop there. I won't go through that last slide, but I suspect we'll probably make these slides available to people, Cecile.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay.
Wow.
Any questions?
Certainly something for the Phoenix people to look at.
We really need that name.
You're really trying to bring that up today, aren't you, Kevin?
Mike, that was an amazing demo. I really love what you did with that, like the what if analysis and scenarios. I think that's amazing. So this is proprietary to your company, I guess. When you, let's say I wanted to hire you, you would come in and bring your own code or your own customization to make this happen. Is that
we've productized this now. So CBP is available on the SALSA under vendor close reaches SALSA with the Government of Canada. So you can buy that on the SALSA. Okay. And as an add-on, you have to have, QualiWare obviously as the platform. So if you're already licensed for that, you don't have to invest in that, and you can, you know, plug CBP on top.
So is this only for service desks, or could it also be used for IT planning?
For everything.
No,
No.
anything, any business process. Yeah, we just did this. We just did the call center example to kind of keep the theme for the day, as it were. But
Mike, you did it for lending for Nova Scotia, right?
Yep, we've done some work with the Nova Scotia government. We've done some work for Marine Atlantic in running the ferry operations back and forth to Newfoundland. We're working now with a company called Eden Valley Poultry, who are the largest chicken processing facility in Atlantic Canada. Supply all the KFCs. Anytime you're eating KFC in Ontario, you're eating Nova Scotia chicken. Just wanted to pass that along.
So tell me, Mike, or actually my question is more to Cecile, if I wanted to show this to any of our managers to show the capability of the tool, because I think that's lacking a lot, could I send them a link to the video today? Is that available for
you
people?
absolutely can send them a link to the video. We'll be processing and uploading the recording to our YouTube channel. But Mike is also available to provide live demonstrations as well. So you can certainly, you know, we can set something like that up as well. If you want to do a little teaser with the video initially and then arrange for Mike to have a discussion with them, we could certainly do that as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Carol, we have, there's a variety of demos
also
that we have too. So we could actually, you know, help you pick, you know, the right one. If call center is a little too far from your manager's comfort base, we've got a variety of other demos that we could potentially substitute.
All right.
So the other thing is there are already a couple of other presentations that Mike has given on our YouTube channel. So there's a couple of places to start, you know, a couple of things to look at there. As well, Close Reach and Landmark have a training program. So we have, Mike, maybe you want to talk about what's coming up.
Yep. Yeah. So we have we have actually, it's a bit short on time. We have a lean ABP workshop we're doing in concert with Barrington Consulting here in Halifax. So we're doing that online tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. So that goes through the fundamentals of lean. It gives you a white belt certification and so on. So probably a little too close to the action right now, but we do have a CBP 2-day workshop that we're running with Close Reach on November 23rd to 26th. So we're running that in the mornings. Instead of 2 full days online, we thought we'd break it into 4 morning sessions. Gives you some time in the afternoon to decompress from training, get some work done, and so that's available on the Close Reach site. You can see that there in the description.
And just like any other kind of QualiWare training, you can buy a seat on that course right off the website. Right.
And that would be a hands-on. So we actually have, I mean, we go through the 8-step methodology with a case study. So we have a Government of Canada kind of case study that I've built for different clients over the years. And we'll get you hands-on with CBP and actually building models and understanding kind of some of the behind-the-scenes components of what's involved in CBP.
Hi, this is Deanna. I just had a quick question about it's a good presentation. Just wondering if you've ever come across where you had something that's a little bit more hard to identify with, so like downtime with equipment or.
That's actually, to be honest, easier. My background is manufacturing, so I started doing this work with a very similar tool many years ago, and manufacturing operations is, you know, classically where costing profitability. So I've been at this for almost 30 years now in helping modeling. I mean, this is new. CBP is new because we've built it on the QualiWare platform. But methodology-wise, we've been implementing this for almost 30 years. So there's not very many business processes we've not come across, and we've never been stumped yet.
But this is a very simple model. Some of the stuff that Mike has shown us, and some of it was visible in those other recordings, for the ferry service and Nova Scotia lending, quite complex, like hundreds of activities. And here you only see a few connectors. Well,
Yeah.
on those models, there's a lot. And if you had actually drawn those lines, you'd never be able to see the model. So connectors really fill a need.
I think the challenge in the government is collaboration with the finance people and the strategic planning people and the enterprise architecture people. Like, it's hard to build an enterprise when you have silos, and be able to do scenarios. You absolutely need the collaboration from multiple frameworks within an organization to make this happen.
You've hit the nail on the head, Carol. I mean, and that's why we called the product collaborative business planning intentionally, because you need the finance people, your operations people, strategic planning people, all sitting around the same table, being able to do this kind of scenario planning. Well, first of all, building consensus that this realistically describes the business process, and everybody gives a thumbs up that this is your kind of quote unquote digital twin of your business process. And then really taking advantage of that to run different scenarios.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
No, just go ahead, Mike. Just finish your thought first.
No, I was just going to say, quite often I think government's particularly bad that finance is very isolated from operations. There's usually large walls. I mean, the budgeting process is a classic example where that is a problem. And we use this for what's called activity-based budgeting too, because envisage you've got all your demands here, and now when you're doing your next year's budget, you can actually say, well, what am I expected to do from a volumetric output point of view? And the costs will drive themselves. Basically, you'll be able to develop your budget based on operations. So yeah, we've had good success at bringing the finance people on board with operations using this kind of methodology.
I see a kind of scenario like this for reducing the technical debt, where you could really do some very nice what ifs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a good exercise to do in the government.
And it's all about reusability, right? Which QualiWare, facilitates.
Yeah.
Deanna, did you get your question answered?
The aspect I was interested in was, you talked about equipment and sort of the downtime of that. I guess that would be just another factor that you could add into this model. But you had a really nice layout of your model, but which is sort of the one other thing that's always hard to quantify, right? So here, if your phone system is down on a regular basis, or or any part of your technology or equipment, because I think that we run into this on a daily basis, so it would be a factor I'd definitely.
Yeah. So what you do is typically you would model an activity called downtime, and you may have different types of sources of that downtime. But what that is really doing is it's pulling available time away from your equipment where it should be used in more productive uses, and the costs associated with that now flow. So you can actually get at the cost of downtime. And what you'll find is that changes management's thinking on that. So people may say, oh, that's only 10% downtime. That doesn't seem so bad. When you say that's $1 million you've left on the table because of that, people sort of start to pay attention now. So bringing the financial lens into the equation changes kind of sometimes the priority, and that's also why we see a benefit with lean, because quite often lean initiatives aren't well costed. So we can actually add that in and then help clients prioritize which lean initiatives they should be doing first to have the maximum impact on resource availability and on costs.
So
it changes
Deanna,
the whole conversation.
Absolutely.
And on top of this, or combined with this, actually what you might want to watch is the presentation that Gail Peterson gave about Fortig, which is all about engineering reliability, downtime, and managing all of that related activity at an operational level. So here you've got the planning side, plus you've got the operations level, with Fortig, all running on the QualiWare platform.
Right.
We can do it all.
Can do it all.
Was that silver bullet thing, Michael?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Walter, I see you have your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Well, I have more of a comment than a question because
Sure, jump
I
in.
am an expert in the call center field. This really is very much appropriate for me. And in fact, one of the issues I've been struggling with is in fact how to do the what if scenarios that you showed us. And in fact, I could see the possibilities even from such a small demonstration. So because in reality, we have about 8 different variations of SIP channels. We have 9 variations of cloud technology. We have about 9 variations of call types, plus at least 2 levels of agents, plus the supervisors. So yes, this is a great demo. I really appreciate it, but I agree that a real scenario would be more complicated than this one.
Absolutely. In fact, Michael and I, we had to draw the line, right? And we're looking forward to getting back and making this kind of more appropriate people like yourself who kind of have the in-depth call center knowledge. We just wanted to show some functionality, but you're absolutely right. The different types of levels, the different types of training, all of those can be expanded. And because QualiWare provides that rich graphical user interface, we can demystify some of that, and we can also take away the pain, because typically these kinds of scenarios will be done in Excel, and so you'll have one. Yeah, extremely painful, because then when you want to run a scenario to sort of say, oh, I want to add a new activity, you've got to go and manage 10, 20, 30 formulas that will ultimately break, and you spend most of your time running back and trying to sort out the spreadsheet model. Here it's a matter of quick drag, drop, associate, put that in, put your numbers in, and the math takes care of itself. The algorithms are there to run that. There's no formulas that you have to really edit, right?
Right. Thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure. Thanks for the comments.
Okay. Lots of food for thought. Any other questions, folks? Any other comments?
Kevin Wilson asked a question. I don't know if he's still here.
Nope.
He's not. So he had a question about, Mike referred to the contracting vehicle that Mike mentioned. What he was talking about was the software licensing supply arrangement, the SLSA. We call it the SALSA. It's a procurement vehicle managed by PSPC that allows us to sell software to government. And CBP, this tool, is on the SALSA. So we have a government-wide contract for QualiWare, for architect licenses, and for collaboration licenses. CBP would potentially use plus licenses or as well. Plus, there's the actual CBP software itself. To buy those, you would actually use the SALSA. So you would just do, a standard, I think it's a 9200 requisition, and it gets processed by your department either directly or if they go through PSPC, but using the software licensing supply arrangement to buy the software. And the pricing has been negotiated and is set on that supply arrangement. So anybody from government can sign on to the SALSA and look up close reach collaborative CBP, collaborative business planning, and the cost of the software is there.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
And the other option we have is what we're calling the CBP cloud. So we've been working closely with Close Reach, and now have this available in a hosted subscription-based licensing model. So a lot of the clients that want to avoid some of the challenges of internal IT installation, ongoing support for on-premise can take advantage of that as well. It was another benefit of the COVID hiatus for us.